I'm building a four-wheel drive drag truck from Junkyard parts, literally from the ground up, and we are dangerously close to taking it on its very first test drive, which is great because this project's been going on for 3 years. But before we hit the road, we've got to build an exhaust, we've got to get some things mounted, fix some fuel leaks, get the transmission cooler in place, and the list, it goes on and on. But today, we're knocking a bunch of big ones off the list, so let's jump right in. So I'm trying this thing where I trade my money for my time. Basically, in order to get the truck on the road a little bit quicker, I'm buying a few parts instead of modifying ones that I have. Case in point, shift cable bracket. This is from a what I'd call an OBS Chevy, a GMT 800. It bolts to the 4L80, but this spacing is wrong. So to fix it, I would have had to cut there and slide the position of the cable to make it work. Pretty easy, right? Really wouldn't take all that much time. I can't find the original AC Delcos. I could probably go to a junkyard, but again, time. So I hopped on Amazon and I found a stainless steel repop of the original bracket. I thought, great, it was like 15 bucks. We'll bolt it on and we'll be in business. It does bolt on and it does move the transmission, but you couldn't go all the way down into first gear. So we ended up having to do basically the same exact thing. So not a huge deal. It really only took me like 35 minutes to correct this and double check it. Still hot. And it's made from stainless steel, which is pretty cool, but could have done that with the original bracket. So there's a lesson in there to be learned somehow. I don't know quite what it is yet. Measure twice, cut once, I guess. Now that the shifter bracket has cooled off, we got it installed. I kind of like the stainless steel look, and I always like being able to weld something. Ran it through the gears, so now everything works exactly like it should. We also did fix the leaks that we had. I just built another line from that guy to that guy, so no fuel leaks at all right now. But exhaust. Exhaust is the next thing that I want to do because I want to drive this thing. And I don't want it to be open headers loud because that's ridiculous. So, stock exhaust, not that exciting, but if I've said it once, I've said it a million times, this is temporary. I just, for basically ease of installation, grabbed a stock catalytic converter Y pipe. This is from good buddy Eddie. He's letting me use this. The only thing I'm gonna do is add a bung here for a wideband just to help me do a little bit of tuning kind of in that meantime, because I do want to get it tuned, of course, naturally aspirated, because it's a bigger engine, bigger injectors, has a cam in it and all this good stuff. So we're going to drive it for a little while. That's why I'm going through the effort of building the exhaust, but I don't know how much exhaust I'll show you today. But again, this was 50 bucks for this piece of pipe. Obviously not a very good high performance piece. It's got these crimp bends and things like that, but this saves me so much time because we literally can just bolt it in, and then from there, I'm gonna weld on the muffler. Like I said, I'll probably show you guys the exhaust later, not in this video, but I'm excited to hear how it's gonna sound because I'm putting a diesel muffler on it. Not a DPF, but a diesel muffler. We'll talk about that again later too. But anyway, a little bit more welding to do on this Y pipe. So I've got this little stub pipe that I've saved forever. That was just kind of bolted to the manifold. And that allowed me to just kind of mock up where I wanted the wideband to go. And typically what I'll do is I have this old O2 sensor. I cut the bottom off of it, cut the wires off of it, and I thread it into a bung. That way I can kind of put it on the pipe, move it around, and make sure it'll fit inside the truck. Now, there's a ton of room here, so the placement isn't super critical, so we're just gonna kind of go right there and lock it in. I would wager that at least one person is going to ask, why don't I just put headers on this thing? It's a 6.2, it's cammed, it's modified. Headers would be better. And to that I say, of course, headers would be better. But I can't stress how temporary this is going to be. Yeah, I'm gonna tune it, I wanna do that, but it's probably gonna be like this for 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe. I want to drive the truck. I want to make sure all the bugs are worked out, but I'm not trying to make a lot of power naturally aspirated. I'm just trying to make everything function, and then the twin turbos, they're going on. I need recommendations on a new drill. I've had this Makita forever, and there's a lot of brands out there. I don't pay enough attention in the power tool areas to know what's what. So, what's a good system, you know, maybe for drill and for other tools in the future that I should get? Let me know. All right, we're gonna TIG weld this, which is an unnecessary step, but when you're TIG welding, cleanliness is extremely important. Red Scotch-Brite, 3-inch grinder. And when you're welding, acetone is your friend. Except, of course, when you accidentally leave a wet rag on the ground and almost catch yourself on fire. Not that I would know anything about that. A wise man once told me, if you're going to do something, wait for the shop to be quiet before you make videos. That's what he told me. I like doing this at the end of all the welds just to passivate it, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word. I always do that just because it looks a lot better, in my opinion. I think the colors are cool, but I'm pretty sure that when you leave all the colors on there, that's kind of where the corrosion will start because of the carbide precipitation. Probably one of my least favorite things about this body style of truck is I have to take the cross member out to get a factory Y pipe. But when we have the twin turbo set up, we will design it in such a way that we can service all this without having to take this stupid thing out. So this part right here, exhaust to a Y pipe. If I did that with headers, I'd probably want to do like a 2-inch primary header if I could find one, or at least 1 7/8. You know, build my own 3-inch Y pipe. That's like 4 days worth of work for me. 3 or 4 days. And again, temporary. All right, so I've been up in the office here for the last couple of hours getting a base tune prepared. Of course, we use HP tuners. There's a gazillion things that we got to change. I'll just show you one of them here. The fans, for example. We got electric fans on the truck, so I copy and pasted most of the factory settings. I adjust the temperature. But as far as the rest of the base tune, the process, essentially, we start with a stock tune from the truck. We then do a segment swap for a flex fuel operating system for the engine, segment swap for a 4L80 transmission, for the transmission side of things, and then make a bunch of other changes for some of the things that we've wired in or removed from the harness. So I have the base tune pretty much prepared. We'll go down, flash it on the truck, we'll fire it up and see if we can actually bring it up to temperature, let the fans run, and see what other functionality we have and what other issues we have to address. Because, again, a lot of bugs to work out, I'm sure. All right, so we do have to do a right entire on this because we have changed so much about the operating system. So it's just starting to go there. But like I said, we changed the operating system. So we went from a standard 5.3 4L60 to a flex fuel 4L80, which changes both the engine and the transmission side of things. Talked about that a second ago, but yeah, have to do the right entire operation. detour before we got it fired up. I did the final heat wrap and clamping of the power steering to Hydro Boost lines. Just want to do that because I haven't had a belt on the truck yet, and this would be easier to do before the system gets filled with fluid. So that's done. We will now top off the fluid and start it up again. Don't know if I mentioned it yet or not, but this is a Airaid intake tube I picked up from Summit. Stock airbox intake tube for now. I didn't have a factory one, and I thought this would kind of spice it up a little bit. It does fit a little funny only because it's a Gen 4 intake. This is meant for a Gen 3 truck, but I just had an extra silicone coupler lying around. I adapted it to fit, so this is a pretty cool setup. Works good with the LS2 throttle body and everything. While later, fluid's topped off, running good. This is still more or less a stock tune, just with those things corrected, but it's up to temp. Fans are on, which low speed fans, working good. Running pretty nice, I gotta say. Not a bad sound, just for cats. So, great success, as they say. It's Christmas Eve for me, which means time to go home. But it runs. Catch back with you guys in a second. So, this is almost my favorite part of the build. But I cannot apparently write and speak at the same time. So, I basically make these lists to keep track of things that need to be done. So brake lines, we need to go from master cylinder to proportioning valve. We build some brake lines on the rear axle. And a whole lot more, but I always build these lists. I kind of like just keep them there on the windshield so I can stare at it every day and never forget what has to be done. So I think the next thing I'm gonna start, obviously, to the top of the list is those things, but I'm gonna take a few minutes here and just try to populate the rest of this list so I can remember everything that needs to be done, because 3-year projects, parts from a million different trucks. There's a lot of little things that I'm gonna forget about if I don't keep track. So, to the list. Well, as you probably can guess, based on the selection of tools, brake lines is the next major thing that I wanna take care of. I do have a drive shaft on order. Dan's Driveline out of Vegas is gonna be supplying that. They're building that now. I do have another transfer case that we are going to install. That is on the way also. What else? The wiring is at least done enough where we can drive the truck, but brake lines, we need brakes. And that's the only thing I can control right now, so that's what we're gonna do. All right, I need a measurement. Yeah, I do know it looks chaotic up in here, but I have skillfully, or luckily, allowed enough room for the brake lines to go. So they're gonna kind of come down. There's a little cool spot right in here between the chassis wiring and the engine wiring and the fuel lines and the power steering lines that they're gonna drop straight down. And I did flip the proportioning valve. Normally it sits the other way. So I do need to twist the front and rear, because you can see this one goes to the front, that one goes to the rear. Normally that's flip-flop, so we have to do that translation here. So short version is that port is going to this port, and I need a rough length. So the finished length will be about, call it 17 inches, but we'll make it like, we'll make our cut at 22 or 23 just so we have enough room to play with. Or in the somewhat likely event that I put a flare on there and forget a nut or misbend something, I'll have a little extra room to work with. So the reason why I keep all these extra short pieces around is just for mocking up bends. So like this is the larger radius bender I have here. I just put some marks on the tube for like the starting point and the finishing point, and to match up the marks along here. And then what I'll do is I'll kind of like hold this up inside the truck, visualize where it needs to be, and then as I'm building the real piece, I'll, you know, line the marks up so I can, for the most part, nail the length on the first bend. For the most part. Now, side note worth mentioning, when I was building the brake lines on the chassis, I used a Tolman kit. This is stainless. The Tolman kit was stainless, but the materials are different. This one, it flares really, really nicely every single time. The Tolman stainless material, I had to anneal it. Basically, take the little propane torch, kind of get it so it's almost red and just let it cool down. Because if I didn't do that, when I would flare it, it would split. And if you have a split on the flare, you're gonna have a leak. So I caught one or two that I kind of missed. I had to go back and redo, but yeah, this, whatever this roll is made out of, this stuff, it flares very nicely. A couple hours later, we have the two brake lines done. I think it's gonna fit pretty good. So you can see we do the translation from the front to the rear. That gets everything back where it belongs. It took me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It took me like 6 or 7 little extra bend pieces to get everything where I wanted it, but that made it so I only had to do each of these once. So, burn up some cheap material. I just have a bunch of like regular old aluminized steel brake lines. Anyway, put them on the truck. And for me, at least, the most satisfying part of a project is being able to cross something off the list, because when we do that, we know it is 1000% done. We don't have to think about it. It's like we accomplished something today. So cool. Go out there and accomplish something yourselves. Okay, if you saw my list, you probably saw transmission cooler on it. And big surprise, I'm using the same trans cooler I use on everything, the TrueCool 40K. And the reason I use it, excuse me, on everything is because it works so good. Now there's a lot of different ways you can mount it. I've never used this one before. This is kind of an inexpensive eBay bracket. I know there's a lot of people that make these, but this is just intended to be, again, temporary. So this is the transmission cooler. Obviously it's not a TrueCool, but I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. I picked this one up from Summit Racing. I'll put the link down below. It is exactly, dimensionally and otherwise, the same as a TrueCool 40K. So it's the Durale 33633. I'll put the link below. Once again, I grabbed this from Summit, this guy from eBay. And the only thing I don't really love about this bracket, which we're gonna fix, and I don't understand why they didn't do it this way. So they gave you these little L-shaped brackets, and they're supposed to kind of like bolt there and sandwich this core support, but as you can see, they'll just flop around, which is no bueno. I'll probably just put a small spacer in between here and here and then bolt it in, because again, this is temporary. All right, New Year's resolution time. I resolve in 2026 to finally get a drill press. Basically there, I just used this as the template to make sure those two holes landed in the right spot. And now we gotta just make these the right size. I really wish I would have kept track of how many threaded inserts I've used on this whole truck, but I would bet the number is probably close to 100. Maybe not, maybe like 50, but it's a lot. And it should go without saying, but of course we're using the same size threaded insert as the rest of the truck. So as an aftermarket one, as a factory threaded insert, same hardware, works for both. Yeah, I actually really do like how that fits. I mean, it's inexpensive and it works. Good placement, nothing rubs. Approved. And just like that, one more week down and one more item crossed off our newly fashioned to-do list. And that means we are almost to the point where we can test drive this truck, which is a huge, huge milestone because remember, we are building this entirely from junkyard parts. Like, that's not an exaggeration. We didn't start with a truck. We started with a frame from a junkyard. We got a cab from somebody's backyard, not really a junkyard, but we got parts and pieces, the frame, the engine, the transmission, the transfer case, the rear end, all came from different vehicles, and we have assembled it together in a bit of a Frankenstein creation, and soon we're about to drive it, which is awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. In between now and then, we'll build an exhaust. Can't wait to show you that because I'm actually excited myself to hear how it's going to sound with that muffler. But yeah, this is actually the last video of 2025 for me, which is kind of sobering to think about because I feel like we just turned the calendar over to 2025. But hey, we get older and time flies. So a bit of a housekeeping note. The second gen Cyclone sweepstakes closed a little while ago. The winner will be drawn on Monday the 29th, so stick by your phones. And once we get a hold of the winner and validate them and get all the paperwork done, we'll put that announcement in a video, possibly the next one, maybe not. And then once again, when the winner comes out to get the Cyclone, we'll put that in another video, or it could be both in the same video. I don't know, timetable is hard to tell, but the drawing, Monday the 29th. So thank you guys for watching. 2025, where did it go? Come back soon.